Imagine this scene. It is midnight, and the air is a bitter 28 degrees. A mother is standing on a dark, icy porch, holding her twin sons, who are merely 10 days old. She is still bleeding through her flimsy hospital pajamas from a surgery just over a week ago. Her own mother-in-law has just spat in her face and called her newborn children bastards. Then her husband, the man she promised her life to, physically pushed her outside, bolted the door, and killed the lights, leaving his new family to freeze in the dark. All she had was $43. At least that was their assumption. What they failed to realize was that she owned the very house they kicked her out of, not to mention a vast portfolio of commercial real estate in the city. She is a billionaire who had been faking poverty for the last 4 years. All of it was to find a love that was real. But that night, the charade was over, and the payback she unleashes on them is so meticulously savage, so perfectly legal, and so unbelievably gratifying, you will find it hard to believe it's a true story. If you have ever felt the sting of betrayal, been completely underestimated, or been discarded by the people who were supposed to cherish you, you must watch until the end. Believe me, you need to witness how this billionaire made them regret everything. And if you are a fan of revenge stories where justice prevails, please hit the like button this instant. Leave a comment telling me what you would have done in her shoes, and subscribe so you don't miss more stories like this one, because you will be floored by what happens next. This story is more than just revenge. It is a powerful lesson about self-worth, about never letting anyone define your value, and about the incredible strength that lives inside every woman who has been told she is nothing. Whether you have been betrayed, underestimated, or thrown away by people who should have loved you, this story will show you that your lowest moment can become the foundation of your greatest comeback. You deserve to know that no matter how dark things get, you have the power to rise again. Allow me to take you back to how it all started. The front door slammed shut. I was left standing on the porch at midnight on December 23rd, 2024, with my 10-day-old twin boys in my arms. Both were wailing. The temperature was a frigid 28 degrees. I was dressed in thin, hospital-issued pajamas, which I was bleeding through. My mother-in-law had just spat directly in my face. Her final, hateful words were still ringing in my ears. "Take those bastards and get out of here forever." My own husband, the man who swore he would love me for eternity, was the one who shoved me through the doorway. Then he turned his back on me and disappeared inside. The lock clicked with a dreadful finality. A moment later, the porch light went out, plunging my sons and me into total darkness. They assumed I had nothing but $43 in my purse. The one thing the Mitchell family was oblivious to was that I was the owner of the house they just ejected me from, along with the other 22 houses on that very street. The company Ryan was employed by, and half of all the commercial property in Greenville, North Carolina. My name is Sarah Blake. I am a 32-year-old billionaire who has spent the last 4 years pretending I was broke. This is the account of the most painful betrayal I have ever known, and the details of how I made them pay for every last second of it. If you've ever been looked down on, double-crossed by the very people meant to love you, or tossed out like you were garbage, you need to see this through to the conclusion. Because my response to what they did was something they never could have imagined. Let's rewind to where this story truly begins. 4 years earlier, I was known as Catherine Sarah Blake. And yes, I am a Blake from Blake Holdings. At the age of 28, I went from wealthy to a billionaire in a single day when I took my parents' struggling software company public. My parents, Andrew and Catherine Blake, had created a small software business in Boston way back in 1995 for property managers. It was nothing special, just a basic tool that allowed landlords to keep track of rent and service calls. In 2017, they were killed when their plane went down. It was a private jet in a storm, and they never made it home. I was just 25 years old and inherited a company drowning in $3 million of debt and hemorrhaging cash every single month. Every person I knew told me to sell it, liquidate everything, and just cut my losses, but I refused. It was the only thing I had left of my parents. So, I stopped sleeping. I started working 100-hour weeks. I taught myself how to program artificial intelligence. I completely reinvented the entire platform. I developed Blake OS, an AI capable of predicting building maintenance, calculating the best rental prices, and managing entire property systems without human help. By 2020, we had secured contracts with management firms in 43 different states. In March of that same year, our company went public. I officially became a billionaire at 28. Forbes magazine dubbed me the prop tech princess. Fast Company said I was a genius. I had everything a person could want, yet I felt I had nothing at all. That is because 6 months before the company's initial public offering, I learned that my fiancé Marcus had a plan to marry me, immediately file for divorce, and attempt to take half of my entire fortune. He had been scheming with his attorney for months, had falsified documents, and was preparing to argue that he had been instrumental in the company's success. He almost got away with it. We exposed his plot only 3 days before we were supposed to get married. The criminal trial was an absolute nightmare. The media was a circus. My picture was plastered on every tabloid. Tech heiress, targeted by gold digger, fiancé. I was on the witness stand for 6 days. He received a 5-year sentence for fraud and attempted grand theft. But a part of me broke during that trial. My trust. I could no longer trust anybody. I quit dating. I lost all faith that someone could love me for who I was. People only saw my wealth. They only cared about what I could do for them. So, in the year 2021, I made a radical choice. I relocated to Greenville, North Carolina, a city of a decent size where no one would recognize me. I fabricated a new life story. I introduced myself as Sarah Blake, a freelance copywriter. My parents, I said, had passed away and left me a small insurance policy of $100,000, just enough to purchase a simple condo. That was the story I told. My lawyer, David Harrison, and my personal assistant, Emma Rodriguez, were the only 2 people who knew my actual identity. I tasked them with handling my real life, from the board meetings and the investments to the whole empire, while I made an attempt at living like an average person. All I wanted was to see if somebody could fall for the ordinary Sarah. Sarah, the writer. Sarah, who had a used Honda Civic. Sarah, who used coupons and worried about how high her power bill was. I just wanted to be valued as a human being, not as a bank account that could breathe. I met Ryan Mitchell in September of 2021 during a charity event for the Greenville Public Library. I attended because I've always loved libraries. They were my sanctuary when I was a child. He was there as a weekend volunteer who read stories to the kids. I watched him that afternoon before we were formally introduced. He was reading Where the Wild Things Are to a circle of 6-year-olds, performing all the monster voices and making them roar with laughter. He was so kind and patient, he never once looked at his phone. He was fully engaged. When we finally got a chance to speak, he asked about my profession. I told him I was a copywriter. He simply said, "That's neat. I'm in property management. It is not very glamorous, but it pays the bills." He made no effort to impress me. He did not brag at all. He asked me questions. He actually listened to my answers. We had coffee after the event ended, which turned into dinner the following week, and then we went to a movie. And slowly, with extreme caution, I allowed myself to develop feelings for him. Naturally, I had Emma perform a thorough background check. I am not naive. Ryan Mitchell's record was clean. He had no criminal history, paid his taxes, had no debt besides his student loans, and possessed a good credit score. He was an employee at Hudson Property Management, which, in a twist of irony, was a subsidiary of one of my own holding companies. It was buried under so many corporate layers that not even Ryan's own boss knew who the true owner was. I observed him for 6 months before we became an official couple. I had to be sure, and he seemed completely authentic. He always paid for our dates, even when I knew he was on a tight budget. He remembered the little things I would mention offhand. He was understanding when my anxiety made me seem distant. He never pressured me. After we had been together a year, I came close to telling him the truth on more than a dozen occasions. But every time I was about to, I would think of Marcus. I would see the look in his eyes the moment he knew I had found out about his scheme. The chilling emptiness, the cold calculation, the raw greed. And so, I remained silent, and we created what I was convinced was a genuine life with each other. On Thanksgiving of 2022, Ryan invited me to his family's home for dinner. I should have recognized the red flags. The warning signs were everywhere. The Mitchell house was an ordinary split-level home in a working-class part of town. It was decent, with a trimmed lawn and an American flag on the porch. Barbara Mitchell came to the door in a dress that was far too fancy for a holiday meal, and she was wearing enough perfume to stun a rhino. "So you are Sarah," she announced, sizing me up and down as if I were a piece of furniture she was thinking of buying. "Ryan has shared so much about you." The way she stressed the word "so" made it obvious that he had told them almost nothing. Inside, Tom Mitchell was arranging plates on the table. He was quiet and barely gave me a second glance. Melissa was there, with her husband at the time, Derek. She gave me a hug, but it was the kind of hug where you keep your distance. She leaned in close and whispered, "Your outfit is cute. Did you get it at Target?" She did not mean it as a compliment. Dinner was incredibly awkward. Barbara began her interrogation right away. "So, where did you grow up?" "Around Boston." "Oh, that's fancy. And what about your parents?" "They passed away some years ago." "Oh." She paused for effect. "Did they leave you with anything?" Ryan cut in. "Mom, stop." "What?" "It is a perfectly normal question. I am just trying to get to know the girl." She then inquired about my job. When I told her I was a freelance copywriter, she let out a small, dismissive laugh. "So you are a work-from-home person? That must be very nice, very flexible." She paused. "It is not really a career, though, is it?" I replied, "It pays my bills." "Well, that is a good thing, because Ryan's paycheck is certainly not going to support a family of 4. She smiled as she delivered the line like it was a joke. It was not a joke. Melissa then added, "Sarah, that is a lovely bracelet. Is that real silver?" The bracelet was, in fact, made of platinum and was worth $12,000. It was a gift I had bought for myself, but I had learned to pretend my expensive items were fake. "No, it is just costume jewelry," I lied. "Oh, it looks so authentic. You have such wonderful taste for someone on a tight budget." The rest of the night was exactly like that, a constant stream of little digs and passive-aggressive remarks. Barbara grilled me on every thing: where I lived, the car I drove, how I spent my free time, and if I went to church. When I told her that I was not very religious, her reaction was an audible gasp. She then said, "Oh, Well, Ryan was raised in the church. Our faith is very important to us. Ryan made a weak attempt to defend me. Mom, not everyone is like that, she continued. I am just saying it would be good for her soul, and for both of their souls, if they intend to be serious. On our way home, I told Ryan that his family was a bit overwhelming. They are just protective, he explained. They will warm up to you. Let me tell you, they never warmed up to me. We became engaged in June of 2023. Ryan proposed at the Botanical Gardens in a way that was simple, sweet, and did not cost a lot of money. I truly loved him for that. He was not trying to impress me. He believed a picnic with his grandmother's ring was the essence of romance, and it was. The wedding was a small affair in September 2023, with just 40 people attending. I paid for the entire event, telling Ryan I had been saving for years and wanted to treat us. The venue cost $8,000. I had spent more than that on a handbag just the month before, but he was unaware of that fact. Barbara found fault with every single one of my decisions. My dress was apparently too modern. The flowers were supposedly too expensive. The venue was far too casual. She kept asking why we were not getting married in a church and what other people would think. At the reception, she offered a toast that concluded with, "Welcome to the family, Sarah. I hope you will be a good wife to my son. And always remember that family always comes first." The way she emphasized the word family made her message perfectly clear. She was referring to her family, not to me. Despite all that, the first year of our marriage was genuinely wonderful. Ryan was everything I had ever hoped for in a partner. We shared so much laughter. We took several trips, small getaways, that he believed I was financing with credit cards. I took him to places like Maine, Charleston, and Nashville. We started building a life together. For a while, I almost forgot that my entire life was a carefully constructed lie. Almost. We were renting a small, charming house with 3 bedrooms, about 1,500 square feet. The secret Ryan did not know was that I actually owned it through a shell corporation, so I was essentially paying rent to myself. I had purchased the entire neighborhood as an investment back in 2020. Our life together felt simple and completely normal. I managed my freelance work, which involved disappearing into my office for hours at a time. Ryan assumed I was writing marketing copy. In reality, I was managing a billion-dollar empire through video conferences with my top executives. I truly believed I could maintain this double life indefinitely. I thought I could be both the powerful billionaire CEO and the simple, loving wife. But then I became pregnant, and my entire world changed. It was March of 2024. I had been feeling completely drained and nauseous. A home pregnancy test came back positive. I took 3 more just to be sure, and they were all positive. I scheduled an appointment with my doctor, and the ultrasound changed everything. "Congratulations," Dr. Patterson said, with a smile. "You are having twins." My mind just went blank. Twins? I was not even prepared for 1 baby, let alone 2. But then I saw them on the monitor. 2 tiny little shapes, 2 hearts flickering with life, and I felt something inside my chest break wide open. I started to cry, a mix of happy and terrified tears. I felt every emotion at once. Then the doctor added, "There is one thing that concerns me. You have a condition called placenta previa, where the placenta is covering your cervix. It may correct itself as the pregnancy moves along, but for now, you are considered high risk. You will need to take things extremely easy. That means no heavy lifting, keeping stress to a minimum, and getting plenty of rest." I shared the news with Ryan that evening. He was absolutely ecstatic. He lifted me up and spun me around, then gently set me back down when I reminded him about being high risk. "Twins," he kept repeating in disbelief. We are having twins. Then, a worried look crossed his face. Wait, can we actually afford this? Daycare for 2 babies is incredibly expensive. I reassured him, we will find a way. I was so tempted to tell him the truth in that moment, to let him know that money would never be a problem for us. But the old fears held me back. What if he started to change? What if he saw me as someone different? So, once again, I kept my secret. We told his family the news 2 weeks later during Sunday dinner at the Mitchell house. Barbara had prepared a pot roast. We waited until everyone had finished eating. Mom, Melissa, Sarah, and I have some news. We are pregnant with twins. The silence that followed was incredibly loud. Tom managed a smile and said, "Congratulations." Melissa's face turned pale before she put on a strained smile. "Oh, wow, that is great news." Barbara placed her fork down on her plate with deliberate slowness. "Twins?" she asked, her voice flat. "Yes, we are so excited," Ryan began, but she cut him off. "How do you plan to afford 2 babies, Ryan? Your current salary can barely handle your mortgage payments." Ryan tried to reason with her. "Mom, I am just being realistic. Daycare costs at least $2,000 a month for each child. Then there is formula, diapers, and doctor visits. Have you really thought this through?" I tried to interject, "We will figure it out." She then turned her sharp gaze on me. "Will you continue to work? Or do you expect my son to support you while you stay home and play house?" Ryan stepped in. "That is not fair." Barbara's voice began to rise. "What is not fair is trapping my son with 2 babies when you can hardly even support yourself." I felt as if she had just slapped me across the face. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice trembling. "You heard me," she shot back. "This timing seems awfully convenient. You have been married for less than a year, and suddenly, you are pregnant with twins. You planned this whole thing. You trapped him." Ryan immediately stood up from the table. "Mom, that is enough." "Oh, is it?" she retorted. "It seems I am the only one with the courage to say what everyone else is thinking. She is a gold digger who got pregnant on purpose just to lock you down." Shaking with anger and humiliation, I stood up. "I am leaving." Ryan followed me out the door. In the car, I broke down and cried. He tried to comfort me, holding me close. "She did not mean it. She is just surprised. She will come around." But she absolutely did mean it, and she never came around. That night was only the beginning of the nightmare. 2 weeks after that disastrous dinner, Barbara arrived at our house unannounced, carrying suitcases. "I am moving in," she declared. "You are high risk, Sarah. You need assistance. Family helps family." I looked at Ryan, expecting him to refuse. He looked uncomfortable, but simply said, "Mom, we did not talk about this." "I am your mother," she replied. "I should not need to ask for permission to help with my own grandchildren." And with those words, she moved into our spare bedroom. That was in late April of 2024. The 4 months that came after were a campaign of psychological warfare. She never laid a hand on me or raised her voice. She was far more clever than that. She took my life apart, piece by piece, in such a subtle way that Ryan was completely oblivious to what was happening. Her first move was to rearrange everything in the house. "Your kitchen is so chaotic, dear. Let me help you with it." She proceeded to throw out half of my groceries, claiming, "This is not healthy for the babies." She then replaced everything with food that I could not stand. She completely took over the cooking, and every meal was something she wanted to eat. Next, she targeted my bedroom. "You need to sleep downstairs. The stairs are too dangerous for you in your condition." She moved me into the guest room, which was the smallest and coldest room in the house. She and Tom took over our master bedroom, saying it was just until the babies arrive. She started opening my mail. "I am just trying to help you stay organized," she would say. She asked intrusive questions about my personal bank accounts. "What if something were to happen to you? Ryan should be listed on all of your accounts for emergencies." I finally refused. That was the first time I truly stood up to her. "No, my accounts are my own business." Her eyes turned icy. "What are you trying to hide, Sarah?" "Nothing," I answered. "I just believe in maintaining financial independence." "That is interesting," she said. "Most wives trust their husbands." She then began answering my phone. "Sarah cannot come to the phone right now. She needs to get her rest." My clients started being sent to voicemail. After a while, some of them stopped trying to call me at all. My freelance business was crumbling, but I could not explain that I did not actually depend on it for income. She scrutinized everything I ate. "That is too much sugar," or "that is too much salt," or "that is too many calories." I was hungry all the time, but felt too scared to eat in my own home. She made constant comments about my changing body. "You are gaining so much weight. Are you certain you are not eating for 3 people?" she would ask. "Your face looks so puffy. You really need to be more careful. It is very difficult to lose the weight from a twin pregnancy." At just 17 weeks pregnant, I was starting to develop an eating disorder. The worst part of it all, however, was the complete isolation. She actively discouraged my friends from coming over. "Sarah needs her rest, not a lot of social calls." When my friend Emma tried to visit, Barbara told her, "Now is not a very good time. Sarah is not feeling well." Emma sent me a text message asking, "Are you okay? Your mother-in-law is trying to block me from seeing you." I lied to her. "I am fine, just very tired. I will call you soon." I never did call, because Barbara was always present, listening to my every word and watching my every move. Sometime around the 4th month of my pregnancy, in June of 2024, Ryan started to change. I would catch him looking at me with a new expression, one filled with suspicion and doubt. He stopped showing affection and stopped sleeping in the same room. "You need your rest," he would say, but I could hear Barbara's influence in his voice. I would often hear them whispering together in the kitchen late at night. Barbara would say things like, "I am just saying, son. It all seems very convenient. She got pregnant so soon after the wedding. That just is not right. And she is so secretive. Have you ever stopped to wonder what she might be hiding?" "She is not hiding anything," he would reply. "Then why will she not let you see her bank accounts? What kind of a wife does that?" Melissa started visiting all the time now. She had moved back in with Barbara and Tom following her divorce. She was at our house every single day, adding her own venom to Barbara's. "I am just worried about Ryan," she would say, loud enough for me to overhear. "Sarah just seems so secretive. What if those babies are not even his?" I finally confronted Ryan one night. "Your mother and your sister are turning you against me. They are just concerned," he said. "Concerned about what? I have not done anything wrong." "Then why will you not let me look at your bank statements?" he demanded. "Because they are mine," I said. "Because I deserve to have some privacy in my own marriage." He replied, "Most marriages do not have secrets, Sarah." "I am not keeping secrets," I explained. "I am maintaining boundaries. There is a very big difference." But he could not see the difference at all. With each passing day, he grew more distant. He started working late, getting home after I had already gone to sleep and leaving for work before I woke up. We were living like roommates, not like a married couple. In early July, I started noticing strange things. There was a car parked across the street that seemed to be there far too often. I had the feeling someone was following me to my doctor's appointments. I saw a man holding a camera at the grocery store. I was being followed. I went directly to Barbara and confronted her. "Did you hire someone to follow me?" She did not even bother to deny it. I am protecting my son. If you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about. This is insane, I told her. What is insane, she countered, is a woman who will not share her financial information with her husband. What is insane is all of this secrecy. What are you hiding? I confronted Ryan directly. I said, Sarah, your mother hired someone to follow me. He looked away, clearly uncomfortable, but he said nothing to defend me. Instead, he asked, did you give her a reason to be suspicious? I was his wife. I was pregnant with his children. That should have been all the reason he needed to trust me. He just replied, then prove it. Let me see your bank statements. I refused. He demanded to know why, because if I showed him, our fantasy of a normal marriage would shatter. He would know my secret, and I wasn't ready, so I just stood there in silence. He took my silence as an admission of guilt. It was July 28th, 2024, and I was 24 weeks pregnant. I will never forget that date because it was the day I nearly lost everything. My doctor, Patterson, had put me on modified bed rest. Just take it easy, Sarah, she'd said. Your placenta is still low. We have to watch for any signs of abruption. If you have any bleeding or cramping, you need to call me right away. But my mother-in-law, Barbara, had no sympathy. Bed rest? She scoffed. Women in my day worked right up until they went into labor. This is just ridiculous. You are being lazy. Later that day, she came to me with a basket overflowing with laundry. Take this upstairs, she ordered. The dryer is done. I tried to explain. I am not supposed to lift anything heavy. She cut me off. You are not an invalid. Stop being so dramatic. Ryan was not home, and his father, Tom, was out in his workshop. But Melissa, my sister-in-law, was right there, sitting on the sofa, just scrolling on her phone. I picked up the heavy basket and started up the stairs. I felt a sharp, pulling sensation in my stomach with every step. I finally reached the top landing and turned to go down the hall. Suddenly, Melissa was standing right behind me. Oh, Sarah, she said, I needed to ask you something. She then shoved me hard from behind. I lurched forward, and the basket flew out of my hands. I threw my arms out and caught the railing, stopping myself from falling. But for a few terrifying seconds, I was about to tumble headfirst down 15 stairs. My babies, we were about to fall. I just clung to the railing, frozen in shock, as Melissa stood there at the top of the stairs. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, she exclaimed. Are you all right? You really have to be more careful on these stairs. They are so dangerous. But when I looked at her, her eyes were cold and calculating. I knew in that moment she had done it on purpose. She had tried to make me fall. She had tried to harm my unborn children. I was so stunned I could not even speak. What? She said with a smirk. It was just an accident. You're so clumsy, Sarah. Maybe you should not be carrying heavy things if you cannot handle them. That very night, the contractions started. They were sharp and painful. Ryan rushed me to the hospital. I was completely terrified. At only 24 weeks, it was far too early. I just prayed, please God, no. Dr. Patterson examined me. The babies seem to be fine, she said. Their heartbeats are strong, but there have been some changes to your cervix. You are now at risk for preterm labor. I am putting you on strict bed rest. Absolutely no stairs, no lifting, and no stress. When we finally got home, I told Ryan exactly what Melissa had done. He just said, she bumped into you. Sarah, that is not the same as doing it on purpose, I insisted. She tried to push me down the stairs. He replied, you are just being paranoid. My voice shook as I said, I am pregnant, and your sister just tried to kill your babies. Barbara must have been listening, because she stormed into the room. Melissa would never do such a thing. How dare you accuse her of something so monstrous? You fell because you were not paying attention. It is time you took responsibility for your own actions. I looked at Ryan, pleading with my eyes for him to stand up for me, to be my husband. He just looked away. Later that night, alone in our room, I cried until I could not get a breath. And then I stopped. I pulled out my secret phone, the one Barbara knew nothing about, and I called my friend Emma. I need you to install hidden cameras, I said. I want them in every room except the bathrooms and bedrooms. I need audio recording too. Can you get it done tomorrow while they are all at church? Emma sounded worried. Sarah, what is going on? I just begged her. Please, just do it. The next morning, a Sunday, while the entire Mitchell family was at worship, a team of installers came to the house. They put cameras and listening devices everywhere. The living room, the kitchen, the dining room, and all the hallways. They were cleverly disguised as smoke detectors, picture frames, and even electrical outlet covers. From that day forward, I recorded absolutely everything. I was slowly building my case. By early August, I was in my 7th month of pregnancy and on strict bed rest. But Barbara still forced me to clean, cook, and serve the family. That doctor is just being overly cautious, she would say. You are perfectly fine. One afternoon, Tom found me in the kitchen. I was on my hands and knees, scrubbing the floor where Barbara had intentionally spilled something and ordered me to clean it up. I was crying because the pain in my back was unbearable. I was 29 weeks pregnant with twins, and I was scrubbing a floor. Tom knelt down beside me. Sarah, you need to stop, he said gently. This is not right. I looked up at him, my face streaked with tears. Then please help me. Please tell Ryan what is happening here. He nodded. I see it. I see what Barbara is doing, and it has gone too far. A wave of hope washed over me. Will you really talk to him? Will you tell him what is really going on? I will, he promised. I am going to make this right. And I actually believed him. For the first time in what felt like forever, I thought I finally had an ally. I thought someone else could see the truth and was willing to help me. The very next day, Tom took Ryan aside to talk. I waited in my room, my heart filled with hope. I thought maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was finally coming to an end. An hour later, my bedroom door flew open and Ryan stormed in. He was absolutely furious. Are you trying to turn my own father against my mother? He yelled. What? No, I would never. He cut me off. He told me everything. He told me how you have been complaining about Mom, how you are trying to tear this family apart, how you want to push them out of our home. My stomach felt like it was full of ice. That is not what I said at all. My father does not lie, Sarah, he snarled. But you do. You have been lying to me this entire time. I finally understood. Tom had betrayed me. He had gone straight to Barbara and told her everything I had said. And then Barbara had twisted my words, painting me as the villain. A little later, I saw Tom in the hallway. He refused to even look at me. Why? I whispered. He just stared down at his shoes. I am sorry, he mumbled. Barbara told me that if I took your side, she would divorce me. She said she would take the house, the money, everything. She threatened to make sure I never saw my own grandchildren. I just could not do it. I am so sorry. He quickly walked away, and in that moment, I knew I was utterly alone. No one was going to rescue me. Not Ryan, not Tom, not anyone. If I was going to get through this, I would have to save myself. The private investigator Barbara had hired, a man named Derek Thompson, was following me everywhere I went. He was there at my doctor's appointments, at the grocery store, and even on the short walks I was allowed to take outside. Of course, he never found anything, because there was nothing to find. I was the perfect pregnant housewife, or at least the perfect prisoner pretending to be one. One day I overheard Barbara on the phone, sounding completely frustrated. "There is nothing," she complained. "Absolutely nothing. You have to keep looking. There has to be something," she insisted. "Nobody is this clean." But I was. At least, the version of me she knew, Sarah, the copywriter, was. That woman was boring, broke, and completely faithful. In late August, when I was 32 weeks pregnant, I heard a conversation that made my blood run cold. Barbara, Melissa, and Tom were all in the living room. I was supposed to be in bed resting, but I had hidden a small recorder in my pocket. Another one of my little secrets. I heard Melissa say, "The investigator did not find a thing. Maybe she really is faithful to Ryan." Barbara replied, "Or maybe she is just very clever, but Ryan needs to see her for who she really is. He needs a reason to doubt her." Melissa's voice dropped. "What are you suggesting we do?" Barbara said coldly. "What if we create a reason for him?" Tom started to protest. "Barbara, you cannot be serious." She immediately cut him off. "I am suggesting that we protect our son, and we will do it by any means necessary." I felt a wave of nausea. They were planning to frame me for something. I just did not know what it was yet. I know I should have left right then and there. I should have grabbed my emergency go bag, called Emma, and just disappeared. But I was 32 weeks pregnant with twins, and I was scared. I was terrified of going into labor all by myself. I was afraid of the legal battles over custody that would happen if I left before the babies were born. And I was afraid that if I ran, it would just make me look guilty of something I had never even done. So, I made the decision to stay. That turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. Melissa had a contact, a tech guy named Connor Briggs. He had been fired from Blake Holdings 2 years ago for stealing company secrets. He was bitter, he was broke, and he was willing to do just about anything for cash. I did not find out until much later that Melissa had paid him $15,000 to manufacture fake evidence that I was having an affair. This was not just a simple case of Photoshop. Connor was an expert. He used real photos of me from my social media accounts to create sophisticated deepfake images. He swapped my face onto the body of another woman in intimate situations with a male model. The metadata on the images even looked real because he knew how to fake that, too. He had worked in the tech industry before his life unraveled, but fake pictures were not going to be enough. They needed to build a more convincing story. So, they created fake dating profiles using my real photos. They used a burner phone to create fake text message conversations. They even created false GPS data that showed I had been at hotels. Connor had temporarily hacked into my phone to copy my real location data, which he then altered. They had fake receipts from restaurants and hotels with my signature on them. Melissa had been practicing my signature for weeks. They even had a witness, a friend of Melissa's named Ashley, who was prepared to lie and say she had seen me with another man. It was an elaborate, expensive, and cold-hearted plan. They were building a case designed to completely destroy me. On September 15th, I was 35 weeks pregnant. I felt enormous. I was exhausted and in constant pain. It felt like the babies were resting on every one of my internal organs. I could not get any sleep. I could not even walk more than 20 feet without needing to stop and sit down. That evening, Barbara walked into my room. She was holding her phone, and her face was lit up with a look of triumph. "We are going to have a family meeting right now," she announced. I told her I was tired, but she just said, "Now, Sarah." Ryan was called home from his office. Tom was brought in from his workshop. Melissa came out of her room. They had me sit in a chair in the middle of the living room, like I was on trial. Barbara held up her phone. "The private investigator sent his final report over today," she said. My heart began to race. "And he found something very interesting." She started scrolling through photos. They were pictures of me, but not really me. It looked like me, in a hotel room, with a man I had never seen before in my life. The pictures showed me kissing him, in bed with him. "What is that?" I whispered.
That was all.
"That was about omnitrended," Barbara said with a smile, "is proof that you have been cheating on my son." I shook my head. "Those are not real. Those are fake." Melissa then chimed in. "Oh, there is more," she showed. She showed me her phone. It had screenshots from dating apps like OkCupid, Tinder, and Bumble. They all used my pictures and my name. There were even explicit messages sent to different men. I have never used those apps in my life. A printout in Ryan's hand showed my phone's location data. It claimed I was at the downtown Marriott 7 times over the last 4 months. He said, "You told me those were doctor's appointments. I insisted they were." "These are fakes," I pleaded. "Someone must have created them." Barbara spoke softly, saying there was a witness, a woman named Ashley Clark, who works at the hotel. She apparently saw me there, with another man on several occasions, and confirmed it was me. The room felt like it was spinning. They had an answer for everything. Their story was perfectly constructed. It was also a complete lie. "Ryan, please," I said, getting up to go to him. He took a step back from me. "Don't," he said. "Do not touch me. Those pictures are computer-generated fakes. Someone made them with special software. Please, just look at them more closely." "I have looked," he replied, his voice completely empty. "I have looked at everything. The pictures, the text threads, all of it. The evidence is overwhelming, Sarah. It is all manufactured," I yelled, my voice getting louder. "Your mother and your sister are setting me up. They are trying to get me out of your life. They hired someone to do this." "Listen to yourself," Barbara said in a calm voice. "You sound completely insane. You sound paranoid. Perhaps the pregnancy hormones are messing with your mind." "I am not crazy," I shot back. "I am being framed." Ryan refused to even make eye contact with me. "I want a DNA test after the babies are born. Until we have proof that they are mine, I do not want you anywhere near me. They are your sons." "Are they?" he asked, finally meeting my gaze with pure hatred in his eyes. "Because at this moment, Sarah, I have no idea what is true. I do not know who you are. I am not sure I ever did." Then he turned and walked away. Barbara just smiled. Melissa was busy on her phone. Tom just stared at the floor. I was left standing there, 8 months pregnant. They were calling me a cheater, a liar, and an unfaithful wife. I had no way to defend myself because the evidence they created was flawless. It was completely fake, but it was absolutely perfect. That evening, at 35 weeks pregnant, I made a call to David Harrison, my attorney. I told him, I have to get out of here now. I need a safe place to stay, a security detail, and for you to prepare divorce papers. He promised to have it all arranged in 48 hours. I told him to make it 24. I put a small bag together and hid it deep in the trunk of my car, underneath the spare tire. I had developed a plan. The next morning, the entire family would be at church, just like they were every single Sunday. My plan was to wait for them to go, then drive to Charlotte. I would meet David and Emma at a hotel and have my babies there, where I knew I would be safe. I only needed to get through one more day. On Sunday morning, September 17th, I listened as they all got ready for church. I stayed in my room and heard the front door open, followed by the sound of the car starting. I gave it 10 extra minutes, just to be sure. Then, I stood up, grabbed my purse, and walked toward the door. I saw Melissa standing in the hallway, about to go somewhere, my heart completely stopped. "I thought you had gone to church," I said. She replied, "I decided to stay home. I noticed she was holding something. It was my bag, the same one I had hidden in the trunk." She said, "I discovered this yesterday when I took your car." "What exactly were you planning to do, Sarah?" Just then, Barbara walked in from the kitchen, and Ryan came in from the garage. They had not gone to church at all. The whole thing was a setup. "You were trying to run away," Barbara said. "You were going to take those babies and just vanish." "They are my babies," I replied. "We will see about that," she said. "Ryan, call our lawyer." Within seconds, Ryan was on the phone. Barbara took my car keys, my phone, and my purse away from me. "You are not going anywhere," she told me. "Not until those babies are born and we have the test results. And if they are not Ryan's, you will leave this house with absolutely nothing. No babies, no dignity, nothing at all." They forced me down into the basement, the unfinished part of the house. It was cold, damp, and smelled like mold. They installed a lock on the outside of the door. "It is for your own good," Barbara explained. "You are obviously not stable, trying to run away with babies that might not even be part of this family. We are just protecting you from yourself." The door swung shut, and I heard the lock click into place. I was a prisoner. I was 35 weeks pregnant and locked in a basement. I had no phone, no way out, and no reason to hope. As I sat on the cold concrete, I finally understood their plan. They were going to hold me here until I had the babies. Then they would take my children and kick me out onto the street, and I was completely powerless to stop them. This was my new reality. This was the third time in my life I had felt complete despair. I was helpless, totally and completely helpless. On September 24th, at 3 in the morning, I was 37 weeks pregnant. I woke up in the basement feeling a sharp, searing pain. It was contractions, real ones, coming every 3 minutes. I had been having Braxton Hicks contractions for weeks, but this was entirely different. This was the real deal. I was locked in a basement, about to give birth all by myself. I started screaming for help. I banged my fists on the door. "Help!" I yelled. "Somebody please help me! The babies are coming." There was only silence. I could not hear anyone moving around in the house above me. I screamed even louder and pounded on the door with more force. "Please! I am in labor. Please help." At last, I heard footsteps. The lock turned, and the door opened. Barbara stood in the doorway, wearing her bathrobe, looking irritated. "Stop all the drama," she said. "You are not due for another 3 weeks." "The contractions are 3 minutes apart," I told her. "The babies are coming right now. It is just false labor," she said. "You are fine. Go back to your sleep." "I am not fine," I insisted. Another contraction seized my body. I bent over in pain, screaming. Barbara just watched me for a second before closing the door. I heard the definite click of the lock. She had abandoned me there. I have no idea how long I continued to scream. Time lost all meaning. My entire world was just pain, terror, and the horrifying knowledge that I was going to have my babies alone on a cold basement floor. My babies could die. I could die. And nobody cared. Sometime close to 4 o'clock, a thought came to me. I remembered finding an old iPad in the basement. It did not have a SIM card, but it could still connect to the house Wi-Fi. I crawled over to it, my hands shaking uncontrollably. As contractions came every 2 minutes, I managed to open the web browser and typed 911.gov. I found the feature that lets you text 911. I typed, "I am in labor, 37 weeks pregnant with twins. It is a high-risk pregnancy. I am locked in a basement. They will not let me out. Please send help. The address is 847 Maple Drive, Greenville. Please come quickly." I pressed the send button. I prayed that someone would read it. I prayed that help would come. After 15 minutes, which felt like a lifetime, I heard the sound of sirens. Then I heard loud pounding on the front door. It was the police and emergency medical technicians. "Open up," they yelled. I could hear Barbara's voice upstairs. "There has to be a mistake," she said. An emergency technician replied, "We received a 911 text from this house. Someone is in labor. Where is she?" I heard more yelling, and then the sound of feet running down the basement stairs. The door flew open. 2 paramedics just stood there, staring at me. I was 37 weeks pregnant, lying on a concrete floor in the middle of active labor and sobbing. "Oh my God," one of them said. "How long have they kept you down here?" "A week," I managed to say before another contraction made me scream. "Ma'am, we have to get you to the hospital immediately." They carefully placed me on a stretcher. As they were carrying me up the stairs, I saw the entire Mitchell family standing in the living room. Barbara, Jabeen, Melissa, and Ryan were all in their pajamas, looking completely stunned. Barbara tried to lie to the police. She has been having some emotional difficulties. We were only trying to ensure she was safe. "You locked her in the basement?" the police officer asked, looking totally disgusted. "While she was in labor?" one of the emergency technicians added, turning to the family. "After we are done at the hospital, we will be filing a report with Child Protective Services. This is child endangerment." Ryan's face turned completely white. I ended up giving birth at Greenville Memorial Hospital. My labor lasted for 22 hours. Ryan finally made an appearance at hour 16. He was drunk. I could smell the whiskey on him from the other side of the room. "Are you actually drunk right now?" the nurse asked him. "I needed something to help with my nerves," he replied. He looked over at me with cold, empty eyes. "As soon as this is finished, we are getting that DNA test done today." I was in too much pain to even try to argue. Another contraction hit me, and I screamed. "Do you want me to go?" he asked. Yes, I was able to get out. "Get out of here." He left. He did not come back. At 2:37 in the morning, on September 25th, my son Logan was born. He weighed 6 pounds and 2 ounces. He was perfect. At 2:51 in the morning, my son Lucas came next. He weighed 5 pounds and 14 ounces. He was also perfect. I held both of them in my arms and cried. They were so tiny, so absolutely perfect, and they were mine. "Hi, my sweet babies," I whispered to them. "Hi, I am your mama. I am so very sorry. I am so sorry for everything you have had to go through already, but your mama is here. Mama has you now, and I promise you both, I will always protect you, no matter what it takes." The nurse came in and asked if there was anyone I wanted to call. "My husband was already here," I answered quietly. "He left." "Oh, yes." She looked at me with so much pity in her eyes. "I am so sorry, honey. Is there anyone else you can call?" I thought about calling Emma, but my phone was still back at that house. They had taken all of my things. "No," I whispered. "It is just the 3 of us." So there I was, sitting in that hospital room, by myself, with my 2 newborn sons. There were no flowers, no balloons, no visiting family, and no celebration. It was just me and my boys against the entire world. I stayed in the hospital for 4 days to recover from my C-section. The babies were healthy but small, so the doctors wanted to keep us for observation. Barbara came to visit one time on the 2nd day. She walked right into my room, glanced at the babies sleeping in their bassinet, and said, "They certainly have the Mitchell nose, but that does not really prove anything. We are still going forward with the DNA test." She never held them. She never asked what their names were. She did not even congratulate me. She was gone in 5 minutes. Melissa sent me a text. "I hope you and the bastards are doing well." She included a smiley face emoji with it. Ryan stopped by on the 3rd day, and he was sober this time. He just stood in the doorway, looking over at his sons. "Have you decided on names?" he asked. "Logan and Lucas," I told him. He nodded. Those are good names. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Ryan, do not do this. Just do not. We will get the DNA test done when you are back home, he said. Until that happens, I do not want to form an attachment to children who might not even be mine. Then he left. The hospital social worker visited me later that afternoon. Mrs. Mitchell, I need to ask you, are you safe in your home? I really wanted to scream no at her. I wanted to tell her everything about being locked in the basement, about the abuse, and about all the fake evidence they created. But if I told her the truth, what would happen next? They would start an investigation. They might even take my babies from me and place them in foster care while everything got sorted out. I could not take that risk. So, I lied. Yes, I am safe, I said. We just have some complicated family issues. She just looked at me for a very long moment. She suspected I was not telling the truth, but there was no way for her to confirm it. If you ever need help, she said, handing me a small card, these are resources for domestic abuse. I accepted the card, tucked it into my pocket, and gave a small nod. After she walked away, I was enveloped in silence once more. On the fourth day, September 29th, I was discharged. I placed a call to the house. I am ready to come home now. Barbara's voice was sharp. We are busy. You should take a taxi. I just came out of surgery, I explained. I have 2 newborn babies. A taxi is not possible. The line went dead. She had hung up on me. I had to call a taxi on my own. The driver was kind enough to help me secure the car seats I had purchased before the twins arrived. I sat in the back of the car with my 10-day-old sons beside me, still in pain from my incision, finding it difficult to even walk, on my way home from the hospital in a cab. As we approached the house, I saw it was completely dark. Not a single light was on, and no one was waiting for me. The taxi driver glanced back, his expression filled with concern. Do you need any help getting inside, ma'am? I shook my head. No, thank you. He assisted me in getting the babies onto the porch. I gave him the last of the cash I had and watched his car disappear down the street. Then I turned the key, opened the door to my own home, and walked straight into a nightmare. Nothing had been prepared for our arrival. The cribs I had carefully selected were still packed away in their boxes, waiting to be assembled. There was no warm welcome, no offer of help, just an empty, silent house. I placed the babies, still in their car seats, in the middle of the living room floor. It seemed like the only safe place for them. Then I began the impossible task of putting the cribs together by myself. I was only 10 days past a major operation, my stitches pulling with every movement, feeling faint from the loss of blood. The ordeal took me 3 grueling hours. I wept through nearly all of it. During that first night, Logan and Lucas needed to eat every 90 minutes. I was trying to breastfeed them, but it was a struggle. The process was difficult and painful, as they had trouble latching on. I was utterly exhausted, completely alone, and in constant agony. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Barbara entered my room. You must be quieter, she demanded. Your crying is disturbing everyone's sleep. I am not the one crying, I said. The babies are crying. They are hungry, and I am trying to feed them. Then you need to figure it out, she snapped. And when you are finished, the kitchen needs to be cleaned. There is also a load of laundry in the machine, and the living room is a disaster. I looked at her in disbelief. I just had major abdominal surgery. She scoffed. Women in my generation were back on their feet the following day. You need to stop being so lazy. With that, she turned and left. I sat there, cradling my children, as a horrible realization washed over me. They expected me to manage everything, the babies, the household chores, the entire family, all while I was recovering from a C-section, still bleeding, and barely able to stand on my own. I had no other option, so I did what they demanded. The days that followed became a painful blur. On the second day, I made breakfast for the whole family with a screaming infant in my arms. My incision felt like it was on fire. I was almost certain an infection was starting to set in. On day 3, Barbara deliberately slammed the door to my room just after both babies had finally fallen asleep. They both woke up wailing. When I shot her a furious look, she simply smiled. "Oh, sorry, I did not realize they were sleeping." On the 4th day, I was attempting to pump breast milk. It took a full 30 minutes just to get enough for a single feeding. I had just filled 2 bottles when Melissa entered the kitchen, snatched them from the counter, and emptied them both into the sink. "Oops, my hand must have slipped," she said, with fake innocence. I just stared at her, stunned. "That took me an hour to pump." "Well, I guess you will just have to do it again," she replied. "Or you could buy formula instead, with the money that you do not have." She walked out of the kitchen, laughing to herself. On the 5th day, we ran out of diapers. I asked Ryan to please pick some up on his way home from work. He never did. He claimed he forgot. I was forced to use old torn t-shirts as makeshift diapers until I was able to get to the store myself the next day. By the 6th day, my C-section stitches were clearly infected. The area was red, hot to the touch, and leaking fluid. I knew I needed antibiotics. I told Barbara about it. Her response was dismissive. "You are fine. Stop being so dramatic." On the 7th day, I had not slept for more than 45 minutes at a time in a week. I began to hallucinate, imagining things moving in the corners of my vision. I dropped a bottle, and it shattered on the floor. I stood there, staring at the pieces of broken glass, completely unable to process what I was supposed to do next. Ryan walked in. "Clean that up," he ordered. "You are making a mess." I looked up at him, at the stranger who wore my husband's face, and I felt absolutely nothing at all. On the 8th day, October 7th, at 3 in the morning, I was back in the basement. They had moved me and the babies down there, complaining that our noise was keeping them awake upstairs. I was trying to feed Lucas while Logan was screaming in his bassinet nearby. My C-section infection was now completely out of control. My fever had spiked to 103 degrees. I was shaking uncontrollably, dizzy, and barely able to stay conscious. Both of my babies were crying. I could not remember the last time I had eaten a meal, had a drink of water, or gotten any real sleep. My eyes drifted to the water heater in the corner of the dark basement. Natural gas. I could see the control valve. It would only take 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds. The thought crossed my mind. It would be so simple. I could just turn the valve, lie down with my babies, and drift off to sleep. It would be the end of this living nightmare. The 3 of us could finally be at peace together, far away from all this horror. Logan was wailing. Lucas was wailing. I was weeping. Every part of my body ached. The situation felt completely impossible. My hand began to move toward the valve, and then Logan suddenly stopped crying. He looked directly at me with his wide blue eyes, the same eyes as Ryan's, and he made a soft, cooing sound. In that single moment, something inside of me broke apart and then instantly reformed into something stronger. "No," I whispered to him. "No, Mama is not giving up. Mama is going to fight. Mama is going to get us out of here." I summoned the very last bit of my strength and started pounding on the basement door. I beat on it and screamed for 20 minutes without stopping until my hands were completely raw. At last, Melissa threw the door open. "What is your problem?" she demanded. Then she saw me. She saw the high fever, the blood that had soaked through my clothes, and the screaming baby. For just a second, even she looked genuinely frightened. "I need to go to a hospital," I gasped. "The infection. I think I am dying. Please." She went and got Barbara. Barbara called 911, but she told the operator, "My daughter-in-law is being overly dramatic about some pain, but perhaps you should come check on her for the sake of the babies." For the second time in 10 days, I was back in an ambulance. Inside the hospital, the emergency room doctor was livid. He told me the incision from my C-section had a severe infection and that I had sepsis. "You could have lost your life," he said. "Who has been checking on you? Where is your follow-up medical care?" I just mumbled that I was too busy. "Too busy?" the doctor shot back. "You just went through major surgery. Where are your relatives? Who is supporting you?" Then the social worker appeared again. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, "this is our second time seeing you in 2 weeks. On both occasions, we have observed signs of neglect. I need you to tell me the truth. Is someone hurting you?" I glanced over at my twin babies sleeping in the hospital bassinet. I imagined what would happen if I admitted the truth. Foster care, being separated from my children, endless legal fights. "No," I lied. "I just haven't been taking proper care of myself. I promise to do better." She clearly did not believe a word I said, but she lacked any proof. The hospital staff put me on intravenous antibiotics, observed me for 18 hours, cleaned and repaired my incision, and instructed me to get some rest. After that, they released me back to the house, which meant back to the basement, and back to that living hell. I only had 2 days left before they threw me out at midnight. Those next 2 days involved the most terrible abuse I had ever experienced in my life, and I had no clue that things were about to become significantly worse. It was October 8th, the 9th day of my son's lives. A tech specialist named Connor Briggs, the man Melissa had hired, delivered his final package of so-called evidence. It contained more deepfakes and even more skillfully altered screenshots of Sarah's activity on dating apps during my pregnancy. He included fake GPS records that placed me at hotels when I was actually at home, along with forged receipts and other fabrications. But the most destructive item was a falsified video call. Using deepfake technology, Connor had manufactured a video that appeared to show me engaged in an explicit video call with a man. It looked completely authentic. The technological skill was as impressive as it was horrifying. That very evening, Barbara showed the video to Ryan. I did not know any of this was happening. I was down in the basement with my babies, just trying to make it through another hour. Ryan watched the video. His face turned from white to red and then to an icy calm. "I want her out of this house tonight," he said. "What?" Even Barbara seemed taken aback by his tone. "Tonight? I want her out of my house immediately," he repeated. "Her and those children that are not mine. Ryan, it is very late. I do not care. I want her gone right now before I do something I will end up regretting." Melissa sent a text to Ashley, the so-called witness, who quickly provided a statement claiming she had personally seen me at hotels on 6 different occasions, confirming the affair. They now had everything they needed to complete their plan. Their case was airtight, perfectly constructed, and a complete fabrication. But Ryan believed it. Or perhaps Ryan simply wanted to believe it, because accepting that I had cheated was far easier than admitting that his own family was systematically destroying an innocent woman. I was feeding Lucas while Logan slept when the basement door was thrown open with a crash. The entire family was standing there on the stairs. Ryan, Barbara, Melissa, and Tom. All of them stared down at me, their faces twisted with pure hatred. My heart began to pound in my chest. I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong. Melissa was the first to speak, holding her phone out in front of her like a weapon. "We know everything, Sarah. We have the proof now, the final proof." She played a video for me. It was a deep fake video of me, or rather, a version of me that looked exactly like me, on a video call with a man I had never seen before. The woman in the video was touching herself and saying things I would never, ever say. "That is not me," I stammered. "That is a fake. It has to be AI generated." Barbara began to scream at me. "Liar! We have witnesses. We have all the evidence we need. We know you were cheating on my son for your entire pregnancy." Melissa then pointed a trembling finger at Logan and Lucas. "Those babies are not even Mitchell's. You brought bastards into this family's home. You have lied to every single one of us." Ryan's face was like a stone mask, cold and devoid of any emotion. "I want a DNA test done right now." "Ryan, please, you have to listen to me," I begged. "Look at those videos again. Look closely. They are deep fakes. Somebody is trying to frame me." "Somebody?" Barbara let out a harsh laugh. "Do you really think there is some grand conspiracy against you? Do you think we are all insane? Or maybe, just maybe, you are a cheater and a liar?" Tom, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "Ryan, maybe we should all wait until the morning to sort this out." "No," Ryan said, his voice final. "I want her out tonight." I clutched Logan even tighter and instinctively moved to shield the bassinet where Lucas was sleeping. "It is the middle of the night," I pleaded. "It is freezing outside. These are newborn babies. They are your newborns. Please, Ryan, whatever you believe I have done, do not punish them for it." Melissa started to move toward the bassinet. "Perhaps we should keep them," she suggested. "We can get the DNA test done. If they are Mitchell's, then this is where they belong. But she needs to go." A wave of pure terror washed over me. They were actually trying to take my babies away from me. "No," I said, my voice shaking, as I quickly scooped Lucas out of the bassinet. Now I held both of my sons in my arms. "No, you will not touch them. They are mine." Barbara's face contorted into a mask of pure rage. "They are nothing. They are the bastards you had while you were whoring around. Get them out of here. This house. Get out." She lunged at me with a sudden fury, attempting to rip one of the infants from my arms. I spun around, shielding them with my own body. Barbara's hand struck my face with a sharp slap, and a loud ringing filled my ears. Ryan grabbed her and pulled her away, pleading, "Mother, do not." But the harm was already done. She had assaulted me while I held my newborn sons. Tom swung the front door open, letting a blast of December cold rush into the house. The temperature had plummeted to 28 degrees. "Out," was the only word he said. I stared at Ryan a final time. This was my husband, the father of my children, the man for whom I had concealed my entire identity. "They are only 10 days old, Ryan." 10 days. It is the middle of winter. Please, we can arrange a DNA test for tomorrow. Please do not do this." For a brief moment, I saw something shift in his eyes, a flicker of doubt, maybe regret, perhaps even love. But then Barbara murmured something into his ear, and his expression turned to stone. He advanced toward me, placed his hands on my shoulders, and shoved. I staggered backward, moving unwillingly toward the open doorway. I struggled to stay on my feet, clutching my babies even more tightly. They began to wail, sensing the immediate danger. "Ryan." I begged him one last time. He pushed me again, this time with more force. Now I was on the porch, the wind slicing through my thin pajamas as my babies cried in the freezing air. Barbara materialized in the doorway behind him. She stared directly into my eyes, and then she spat. The saliva landed on my cheek, shockingly warm and repulsive. "You are nothing," she hissed at me. "You are trash, and trash belongs out on the street." The door slammed shut with a deafening crack. I heard the sound of several locks turning. Then the porch light clicked off. I was left standing in the freezing darkness, bleeding and exhausted, holding my 10-day-old sons. For about 30 seconds, I was paralyzed, unable to move, unable to think, unable to comprehend the horror that had just occurred. My baby's skin was turning a frightening shade of red from the intense cold. Their cries were piercing. I had lost all feeling in my feet. Blood was trickling down my legs. The incision from my C-section was throbbing with intense pain. I was certain I would die out here. My babies were going to die. This was how it ended. This was our final moment. But then, something inside me changed. A switch flipped. I stopped crying. I stared at that house, watching the lights go out one by one as my supposed family returned to their warm beds, giving no thought to the woman and infants freezing on their front porch. A cold, hard feeling settled deep in my chest. It was not fear, and it was not despair. It was rage, pure, focused, ice-cold rage. I whispered to my sons, "Mama has you. Mama's going to make this right, I promise you. They will pay for this. Every single one of them will pay." I carefully shifted both babies into the crook of one arm, and with my free hand, I pulled my emergency phone from the diaper bag. This was the phone they knew nothing about. My real phone. The one connected to my real life. I dialed a single number. "David, it is me. I am ready." "Come and get us. It is time." "Sarah, what is happening? Where are you located?" 847 Maple Drive. "We are outside. They ejected us from the house, me and the babies. We are freezing to death. Please come quickly. I am 5 minutes from you. Just hold on." I ended the call and wrapped my body completely around my sons, trying to shield them from the cold. I whispered to them, "Logan, Lucas, Mama promises you, you will never feel cold again. You will never feel scared again. You will never be hurt again. And the people who did this to us are going to wish they were never born." A pair of headlights cut through the darkness. A black Range Rover pulled to the curb. Emma leaped from the passenger seat. David got out from the driver's side. "Oh my God, Sarah." Emma was in tears. She immediately wrapped a thick blanket around me and the babies. David was already on his phone. "I need 2 pediatric emergency medical technicians at the Charlotte Plaza Hotel, Suite 4000, immediately. 2 10-day-old infants have been exposed to freezing temperatures." They gently guided us into the car. The heater was blasting at full power. Emma took one baby, and I held the other. Their crying began to subside as warmth returned to their small bodies. As we drove away from the house, I took one last look back. I saw a curtain twitch in an upstairs window. Someone was watching us leave. Perhaps it was Ryan. Perhaps it was Barbara. I allowed myself a small smile. It was not a smile of happiness. It was the smile of a person who had just officially declared war. "David," I said, my voice suddenly calm and icy, "I want you to destroy them. I want it done completely, legally, and permanently. Can you do that for me?" He met my eyes in the rearview mirror. "Yes. Yes, I can." "Then do it," I ordered. "Spare nothing. Show absolutely no mercy." "What should we do about Ryan?" "He is, technically, still your husband." I looked down at Lucas, who was asleep in my arms, and then at Logan, safe in Emma's arms. My perfect, innocent sons who had been discarded like garbage by their own father, especially Ryan. I said in a quiet voice, "I want him to fully understand what he cast aside. I want him to carry that knowledge with him every single day for the rest of his life." The identity of Sarah, the copywriter, perished that night on that cold porch. Catherine Sarah Blake, the billionaire CEO, had returned, and she was seeking retribution. We drove to Charlotte, a 30-minute drive from Greenville, the city that was the center of my real existence. We went to the Charlotte Plaza Hotel, to the top floor. I was the owner of the hotel, but the Mitchells were unaware of that fact. David had reserved the presidential suite using a false name. As we entered, a complete medical team was already there waiting for us. A private neonatal intensive care unit nurse, a pediatrician, and an obstetrician gynecologist for me. The pediatrician examined Logan and Lucas thoroughly. They are all right. They have cold stress, but no signs of hypothermia. They will be fine. The obstetrician examined me and looked at my infected C-section incision. This is getting worse. You require intravenous antibiotics right away. You are also severely dehydrated. You have lost a dangerous amount of blood. Mrs. Blake, you belong in a hospital. I cannot do that. Not right now. I have important work to handle first. She looked like she wanted to protest, but she saw the determination in my eyes and simply nodded. Very well, but I am staying here to monitor you. Emma took the babies. I have them. You need to rest. But I could not rest. Not yet. David, we need to set up the war room now. Within 2 hours, my entire team had gathered in the suite's conference room. David Harrison, my family lawyer, Patricia Clark, my criminal attorney, James Rodriguez, my corporate attorney, Angela Thompson, my public relations specialist, Marcus Webb, my private investigator, and Catherine Lewis, my financial analyst. I walked into that room dressed in a designer suit that I had asked Emma to bring. It was a pearl gray Armani suit that cost $4,000. I looked like a chief executive officer again. I felt like myself again. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. Some of you have known me as Sarah Mitchell. That identity is now gone. I am Catherine Sarah Blake, the Chief Executive Officer of Blake Holdings, and I require your help to destroy the people who just threw me and my newborn sons out into the freezing cold. I pressed a button on the remote. The large screen behind me came to life. It displayed photographs of the entire Mitchell family. Target 1, Ryan Mitchell. Target 2, Barbara Mitchell. Target 3, Melissa Mitchell Hartley. Target 4, Thomas Mitchell. Marcus was the first to speak. Ma'am, I have already finished the background investigation you requested 2 months ago. This is what I discovered. He displayed his findings on the screen. Ryan was employed by Hudson Property Management, a company that was owned by my corporation. He possessed $28,000 in credit card debt and a $15,000 online gambling habit. Barbara was living in a house that I owned, rent-free, through a charity that I personally funded. She had embezzled $127,000 from her husband's business. She maintained a secret bank account in the Cayman Islands. Melissa's boutique was located in a building that I own. She had accumulated $80,000 in business debt. Her former husband also had a restraining order against her. Tom's consulting firm was surviving on contracts from my vendors. He had $45,000 in gambling debts. I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. They are literally surviving on my money. Their entire way of life is financed by me, and they threw me out into the cold. Patricia, my criminal attorney, spoke up next. I have reviewed all the video and audio recordings you have provided. We have undeniable proof of child endangerment, false imprisonment, assault, fraud, conspiracy, forgery, and defamation. We are able to press criminal charges against every one of them. James, the corporate attorney, added, and from a business perspective, we can terminate Ryan's employment, evict Barbara from her home, terminate Melissa's lease, and cancel all of Thomas's contracts. We can also report Barbara's embezzlement and freeze her offshore accounts. Everything can be done legally, and it can all be done immediately. Angela, the public relations specialist, said, and I can turn this into the biggest news story of the year. Billionaire chief executive officer, living as a secret housewife, abused by her in-laws, and thrown out with her newborn children. The video and audio evidence you possess is absolutely devastating. This story will become global news. I considered my options for exactly 3 seconds. Do all of it, I commanded. Do everything. I want them to wake up tomorrow morning to find their entire world has been destroyed. I want every action to be legal, fully documented, and made public. I want the whole world to know what they did. David looked at me with concern. Sarah, this is a very aggressive approach. We could resolve this quietly through the court system. I do not want quiet, I replied. I want them to be humiliated. I want them to be so completely ruined that their family name becomes a synonym for cruelty and stupidity. I want them to know exactly what it feels like to lose everything in a single night. The same way they tried to make me lose everything. Patricia nodded in agreement. Then we will begin tomorrow, December 24th. Christmas Eve. I smiled. That is perfect. Let them spend their Christmas in hell. On Christmas Eve morning, December 24th, Ryan woke up at 6 o'clock to the sound of his phone ringing. His boss was demanding that he come to the office immediately. He arrived at 7 o'clock. The expression on his boss's face was grim. Ryan, Hudson. Property management has been acquired by Blake Holdings. We are now under new ownership. They have conducted an audit of all employees. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately, for a severe violation of our ethical conduct standards. You were recorded ejecting your wife and newborn children from your home into freezing temperatures. Blake Holdings maintains a zero-tolerance policy regarding domestic abuse. Ryan's face turned pale. How did they know? Who told them? Your severance package will be $0 because this is a for-cause termination. Security will now escort you from the building. Ryan was walked out of his job at 7:30 on Christmas Eve morning. He had no job, no severance pay, and no future prospects. When he got to his car, he found an envelope tucked under his windshield wiper. Inside were divorce papers, child custody papers, and a short note. The babies are mine. You surrendered your rights as a father when you threw them out into the cold. DNA test. The attached results showed a 99.9% probability. You are the father. Congratulations. You just destroyed your own family. Signed, Sarah. He threw up right there in his car. At 8 in the morning, the doorbell rang while Barbara was making breakfast. A courier delivered a certified letter. It was a notice of eviction. The letter stated that her tenancy was terminated because of a fraudulent application for housing assistance. She had 72 hours to leave the property. She immediately called the property management company. There has to be some kind of mistake. There is no mistake, ma'am. The building was recently acquired by Blake Properties, LLC. Your application was found to contain false information. You have 72 hours. Who is Blake Properties? I am not at liberty to disclose that, ma'am. She hung up the phone, her hands trembling. 10 minutes later, there was another knock on the door. It was the police. Are you Barbara Mitchell? Yes. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. They placed her in handcuffs and read her rights. Tom just stood there in complete shock as he watched them put her in a police car on the morning of Christmas Eve. The judge set bail at $100,000, which Tom could not afford. She had to remain in jail. When Melissa arrived to open her boutique at 9, she saw an eviction notice taped to the door. The building had been condemned for multiple code violations. All tenants were ordered to vacate the premises immediately. She called the building's management office. What violations are you talking about? The new owners conducted an inspection. They found fire code violations, electrical hazards, and mold. The owner is Blake Commercial Properties. She stepped inside to start gathering her merchandise and saw another envelope. It was a civil lawsuit for defamation, fraud, conspiracy, and causing emotional distress. The plaintiff was named Catherine Sarah Blake. The damages being sought totaled $2.5 million. Attached were stills from the fake videos, bank statements showing her payment to Connor Briggs, and text messages between them. It was everything. She crumpled to the floor, They had proof. They had absolutely everything. Tom got 3 phone calls that morning. His top clients were all terminating their contracts. Then, his bank called to inform him his business loan was due in full. A company named Blake Financial Services had just acquired it. In just 3 hours, Tom lost 80% of his business income and was now facing a 6-figure debt that needed to be paid immediately. He called Ryan. "Something is happening. Someone is coming after us." Ryan's voice sounded empty. "I know who it is." "Who?" "It is Sarah." "Sarah is the one doing this." "Sarah? You mean your wife?" "Isham." "The copywriter? How is that even possible?" "I do not think she is a copywriter, Dad. In fact, I do not think we ever really knew who she was." They all met at the house. Tom, Melissa, and Ryan. Barbara was still in jail. They gathered in the same living room where they had schemed against me, the same room where they had called me trash. Tom was the first to speak. "Somebody named Blake is systematically ruining us." "Who in the world is Blake?" Melissa whispered to him. "Sarah's last name is Blake." The room fell silent. Ryan said, "No, that is impossible. She is a nobody." "Did you ever actually look at her bank statements?" Tom asked. "No." "Did you ever truly know her at all, Ryan?" Ryan's face fell apart. "Oh my God. What if we were wrong about everything?" Melissa took out her phone and searched for Catherine Blake, CEO. The search results appeared, showing Forbes articles, features in business magazines, and photographs. And there she was, Sarah. But in these pictures, she was wearing expensive designer suits, standing in front of skyscrapers and accepting awards. The headlines read, "PropTech Princess Catherine Blake takes company public at 28. Billionaire CEO of Blake Holdings, valued at $1.8 billion. Catherine Blake." The youngest self-made female billionaire. Melissa's phone slipped from her grasp. "Oh no. Oh no. No, this cannot be." Ryan grabbed her phone and stared at the screen, looking at his wife, his billionaire wife, that he had thrown out into the cold. This cannot be real. But it was. Every single article, every photograph, and every detail confirmed it. Sarah Blake was actually Catherine Sarah Blake, a billionaire CEO, and they had called her worthless trash. They had mistreated her. They had tossed her and her children, his very own children, out into the freezing night because they assumed she was unimportant. Tom said what they were all thinking. "We are finished. We are completely finished." Ryan looked down at the photo on Melissa's phone. It was Sarah, or rather Catherine, looking powerful, confident, and completely in control. He had tried to destroy her, and in doing so, he had given her every possible reason to destroy him in return. And she was only just beginning. On December 26th, 2 days after Christmas, an announcement was made at 8 in the morning. The CEO of Blake Holdings, Catherine Blake, will hold a press conference at 2 in the afternoon regarding recent events. The media is invited. National news outlets picked up the story right away. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, local news stations, business reporters, and human interest. Journalists were all buzzing. No one knew what the press conference was about, but Blake Holdings was a billion-dollar corporation. Any press conference held by Catherine Blake was major news. The event was held in the main hall of the Charlotte Convention Center, which had a capacity of 2,000, and every single seat was taken. I was in a hotel suite, getting ready. Emma was helping me get dressed in a perfectly tailored white Armani suit. White is the color of purity, innocence, and truth. My hair and makeup were done by professionals. I looked powerful, in command, and beautiful. The twins were in the adjoining suite with their nanny and a pediatrician. They were safe and protected. David walked in. "Are you certain about this? Once you make this public, there is no going back." "I am certain. The videos are very emotional. People are going to cry. This story is going to be everywhere." "Good. I want it to be everywhere. I want the entire world to see what they did to me." I took one last look at myself in the mirror. This was the moment. The moment I would stop hiding. The moment I would reclaim my power. "Let's begin." I walked onto the stage at exactly 2 o'clock. The entire room fell quiet. The flashes from cameras were going off everywhere. I looked out and saw a sea of faces, all journalists with cameras and recording equipment. I approached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked straight into the cameras. "My name is Catherine Sarah Blake. I am the founder and chief executive officer of Blake Holdings, a property technology company that is currently valued at $1.8 billion. I am 32 years old. I built this company from the ground up after my parents passed away in a plane crash 7 years ago. I paused to let that information sink in. I am also the woman you might have seen in videos that are now circulating on the internet. Videos that show me being kicked out of my own home at midnight on December 23rd, holding my 10-day-old twin sons in 28-degree weather while I was still recovering from a C-section. Videos of me standing on a porch, bleeding, and holding my screaming newborn babies, pleading not to be discarded like a piece of trash. The room immediately erupted. Reporters shouted questions from all directions. I held up my hand. "Please allow me to tell my story first. Afterward, you may ask questions." The room became silent once more. 4 years ago, I met a man by the name of Ryan Mitchell. I told them the entire story. The choice to conceal my wealth, the mistreatment I endured during my pregnancy, the fake evidence, being locked in the basement, the birth of my children, and being thrown out of my home. As I told my story, the screens behind me came to life with hidden camera footage and audio recordings. The audience watched in horror as they saw Barbara pouring my breast milk down the kitchen sink as Melissa shoved me near the top of the stairs, and as Barbara locked me inside the basement. They watched as the family planned how to create false evidence against me, as they confronted me with it, as Barbara spit directly in my face, as Ryan pushed me out the front door, and as I stood on the porch with my babies in the freezing cold. By the time it was over, half the room was in tears. The other half looked absolutely enraged. After the videos concluded, I continued speaking. They threw me out because they chose to believe fabricated evidence that I had been unfaithful to my husband. They refused to even listen to me when I denied it. They chose to believe lies rather than trust the mother of those children. I paused for dramatic effect. What the Mitchell family did not know when they threw me out is that they were living in a house that I own. They were working for companies that I own. They were surviving on money that was provided by my own generosity. Their entire life was funded by me. There were gasps and murmurs from the crowd. Ryan Mitchell was employed by a company I own and had no idea. Barbara and Tom Mitchell were living rent-free in a house I own through a charity program that I created. Melissa Mitchell's boutique is located in a building that I own. Their very survival was dependent on my kindness. I let that fact sink in. Fact, sink, and they repaid my kindness by locking me in a basement, by creating false evidence of an affair, by throwing me and my newborn sons out into the freezing cold. On December 23rd, just 10 days after I gave birth, by C-section, while I was bleeding, had an infection, and could hardly even walk. My voice became lower and harder. I am not a victim. I am a mother who will always protect her children. I am a CEO who will not stand for abuse. I am a woman who will not be silenced or thrown away. I clicked to the next slide, which showed photos of Ryan, Barbara, and Melissa. Today, I am announcing that I am filing for divorce from Ryan Mitchell and seeking full custody of our sons. I am also filing criminal charges of child endangerment against Ryan, Barbara, and Melissa Mitchell. Criminal charges of fraud and conspiracy will be filed against Melissa Mitchell for creating the deep, fake evidence. Embezzlement charges will be filed against Barbara Mitchell for stealing $127,000 from her husband. And I am filing civil suits for defamation and emotional distress against all of the defendants. I am also terminating all business relationships with the Mitchell family and making a $5 million donation to establish the Haven House Foundation, which will be a shelter and support system for abused mothers and their children. The room erupted into chaos once more. I raised my hand one last time. I am sharing this story not for the purpose of revenge, although there will be justice. I am sharing it because abuse can happen to anyone. Wealthy women are abused. Poor women are abused. Educated women are abused. It happens behind closed doors in both mansions and mobile homes. If you are being abused, please know this. Document absolutely everything. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself legally. Leave when it is safe to do so. And please understand that you deserve so much better. You deserve safety, respect, and love. Never settle for anything less. Thank you. I walked off the stage into a frenzy of activity. Within 30 minutes, the conference went viral, hitting #1 worldwide with headlines like Justice for Sarah, the Blake twins, Billionaire abuse, and the Mitchell family. In just the first 24 hours, the videos pulled in 200 million views. Every network ran the story. A billionaire CEO, hidden as a housewife, reveals shocking abuse. A family throws out a CEO and her newborn babies. They had no idea she was a billionaire. Blake Holdings CEO shares a horrifying tale of domestic abuse. There were think pieces and opinion columns. It was a social media firestorm. Celebrities tweeted their support. Oprah wrote, "This woman's strength is incredible." Reese Witherspoon added, "Every woman deserves better." Ellen said, "Abuse happens in every community, at every income level." The Mitchells were trapped in their homes. Reporters were camped out everywhere, and their phone numbers were leaked. They received thousands of messages and death threats, which I made a point to denounce publicly. Ryan attempted a trip to the grocery store and was recognized instantly. People started confronting him. Someone shouted, "You threw out your own babies." Another said, "A real man, right here, throws his newborn sons out into the cold." Your wife was a billionaire and you treated her like she was garbage. He fled the store without buying a single thing, but he could not escape it at home. Barbara, who was out on bail, tried to use Facebook to defend herself. She wrote, "She was deceiving us." The comments that followed completely destroyed her. One user replied, "So you abused a pregnant woman because she secretly had money?" Another said, "She was not deceiving you. She was testing you, and you failed miserably. Those babies were only 10 days old, and you threw them out in 28-degree weather. You are a monster." The Mitchells became social outcasts overnight. Meanwhile, Blake Holdings stock actually climbed 12% following the press conference. Investors saw the story as a plus. A CEO who had overcome adversity demonstrated strong leadership. I was interviewed by all the major media outlets. I had a 60-minute special, a Good Morning America interview, and an appearance on The Ellen Show. I was on the cover of Time magazine. The headline read, "The CEO Who Fought Back." I became a symbol, not just of wealth or revenge, but of survival, of strength, and of refusing to be silenced. The Mitchells, they also became symbols of cruelty, of ignorance, and of what happens when you completely underestimate a person. Their names were permanently toxic. 3 days after the press conference, on December 29th, the arrests were made. Barbara was charged with child endangerment, false imprisonment, assault, embezzlement, money laundering, and fraud. Melissa was charged with child endangerment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and defamation. Ryan was charged with child endangerment and assault. Tom was not charged with any crime. He cooperated fully, gave a complete deposition, and testified against Barbara. The trials moved forward quickly. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The video recordings were absolutely damning. During Barbara's trial, the prosecutor played the audio of her scheming to fabricate evidence. He presented the video of her spitting on me. A medical expert testified about the infection in my C-section and explained how being forced to work likely caused it. A fire marshal testified about the dangerous living conditions in the basement. The jury only needed 1 hour to deliberate. The verdict was guilty on all counts. The judge stated, "Mrs. Mitchell, I have presided over this court for 23 years. This is one of the most horrendous cases of family abuse I have ever witnessed. You deliberately targeted a vulnerable new mother. You put newborn infants in grave danger. You have shown absolutely no remorse." The sentence was 12 years in federal prison. Barbara began screaming when she heard it. "That woman is a liar. She deserved everything that happened to her." The judge replied, "It was your son who needed protection from you." At Melissa's federal trial, an FBI forensic expert testified about the deep fake images. Connor Briggs testified in exchange for immunity. He said, "She paid me $15,000. He continued, "She told me to make the images appear as authentic as possible." Text messages between Melissa and Connor were displayed for the court. Melissa had written, "Make her look bad." Connor replied, "These will be very convincing." Melissa answered, "Perfect. I want her gone." The verdict was guilty. The sentence was 6 years in federal prison plus a $25,000 fine. During Ryan's trial, his lawyer attempted to argue diminished capacity and undue influence from his mother, but the prosecutor just showed the video. Ryan was seen pushing me out the door, his face completely cold and uncaring. I was called to the stand to testify. It was the first time I had seen Ryan since that terrible night. The prosecutor asked, "Mrs. Blake, can you please describe what occurred on the night of December 23rd? I remained calm and composed. My husband forced me out of our home. I was 10 days postpartum. I was bleeding from an infected C-section incision. I was holding our newborn sons. The temperature outside was 28 degrees. He shoved me, then he closed the door and locked it." The prosecutor then asked, "Did he say anything to you?" I answered, "He said he did not know if the babies were his, despite me telling him repeatedly that they were. I had even offered to do a DNA test the next morning, but he chose to believe lies instead of trusting me, instead of protecting his own children." The prosecutor asked, "And how did that make you feel?" I looked straight at Ryan for the first time. I felt betrayed, heartbroken, and completely and utterly alone. Ryan was openly sobbing in the courtroom. The verdict was guilty of child endangerment, but not guilty on the assault charge. The jury believed he had been manipulated. His sentence was 3 years of probation, mandatory therapy, supervised visitation only, and $3,000 per month in child support. The judge added, "Mr. Mitchell, your personal weakness enabled the abuse of your wife and children. You were too much of a coward to stand up to your own mother. You chose loyalty to an abuser over the protection of your family. I hope you spend every single day of your supervised visits remembering exactly what you threw away." I filed a lawsuit against all 3 of them for emotional distress. The jury awarded me $2.5 million from Barbara, $1 million from Melissa, and $500,000 from Ryan. I donated every penny of it to the Haven House Foundation. I told the reporters, I do not want their money. I want them to understand that there are consequences for their actions. I want other abusers to see what can happen when you pick the wrong person to target. It was a late spring evening, during the golden hour. My penthouse now has a rooftop garden, which I had built right after we moved in. Logan and Lucas are toddling across the grass, chasing the bubbles that Emma is blowing for them. Emma's daughter, Sophie, who is now 4, is helping them catch the bubbles. I sit on a wooden bench, just watching them. I am wearing jeans and a faded Georgetown t-shirt. I have no makeup on, and my hair is up in a messy ponytail. I look peaceful. Emma finishes with the bubbles and comes to sit beside me. "Are you okay today?" she asks. I nod. "Yes, it is a good day. Dr. Morrison says I am making progress. I am sleeping better most nights. The nightmares are happening less often." "That is good," she says. We sit and watch the children play. You know it is okay to not be okay, right? You do not have to be the strong CEO all the time. I give her a sad smile. I am so tired of people calling me strong. I do not feel strong at all. I feel like I am being held together with duct tape and stubbornness. "That is called being human," she replies. "That is actually stronger than pretending everything is fine." Logan runs over, trips, and falls on his bottom. He immediately starts to cry. I go straight to him, pick him up, and check him over. "You are okay, buddy." "It was just a little tumble." "See? Nothing is broken." Logan stops crying, wipes his nose on my shirt, and squirms to be put down. Then he runs right back to play. "You are an incredible mom." "You know that?" Emma says. I watch my boys. I am a terrified mom. I wake up afraid every single day. I am afraid someone will try to take them from me. I am afraid I will mess them up somehow. I am afraid that I am not enough for them. "That is called love," Emma tells me. "You are doing it right." A car pulls into the parking area down below. Tom gets out, and he is carrying a shopping bag. I tense up just a little bit. Old habits are hard to break. He calls up, "I am a few minutes early. Should I wait?" "No, come on up," I say. Tom climbs the stairs to the rooftop garden. The boys see him and run toward him, shouting, "Pop, pop!" He kneels down, very carefully and gently. "Hey guys, look what I brought for you." He pulls 2 small toy dump trucks out of the bag. The boys are absolutely thrilled. He sits on the grass with them, playing and making truck noises. The boys are giggling with delight. Emma watches him carefully. She does not trust him. She never will. "Are you sure about him?" she asks quietly. "He testified," I say. "He told the truth. He is trying, and the boys deserve to have at least one grandparent who is not a monster." "He enabled a monster for 40 years, she points out. "I know," I reply. "But he is also the only one who showed any real remorse. The only one who is doing the work to change. So, I am giving him this supervised, limited chance." Tom looks over at me, catches my eye, and mouths the words silently. "Thank you." I just nod in return. My phone buzzes. It is a text message from an unknown number. I know I should not look, but I do. It says, "Please. I know I do not deserve it. I know I destroyed everything, but please, just talk to me one time. Let me explain. Let me apologize properly. I am begging you. Sarah, please, Ryan." I stare at the message for a long moment. Emma reads it over my shoulder. "Are you going to respond?" she asks. "No." "Good," she says. "He wants forgiveness, so he can feel better about himself. That is not my job anymore. My job is protecting my sons, and I cannot do that by letting their father back into our lives. He is the man who threw them out into the cold when they were only 10 days old. But what if he has changed? What if he really means it? Then he can prove it by respecting my boundaries, by paying his child support on time, and by showing up to his supervised visits sober and prepared. He can prove it by doing the work without needing me to watch him do it. I delete the message without sending a reply. I do not hate him anymore. I feel absolutely nothing, and that feeling is freedom. We sit in silence for a while, watching the children play. Blake Holdings has since grown to a $2.2 billion valuation. I have been on the cover of Forbes 3 times. The Haven House Foundation now operates in 8 states. We have helped 2,847 mothers and their children in just 18 months, and we are growing every day. I personally mentor abuse survivors, give talks, and share my story. I have started dating, casually, but nothing serious. I am not ready, I told Emma. Maybe someday, but right now, my boys and my work are enough. Ryan works at a car wash for $15 an hour. He lives in a studio apartment in a bad part of town. He sees his sons once a month during supervised visits at a family center. At every visit, the boys cry. They do not know who he is. They call him that man. And at every visit, Ryan cries too. He is in therapy, which is court mandated, but he also attends because he says he wants to change, model, to be. He sent me a 12-page letter filled with apologies, explanations, and pleas for my forgiveness. I never wrote back. He did frame one photograph of me holding the twins in the hospital, just hours after they were born, before our world came crashing down, before he tore our lives apart. He reportedly looks at that photo every single night, a constant reminder of everything he threw away. He will never find work in property management again. His name is toxic in the industry. Any background check immediately reveals his criminal history. The newspaper articles and the online videos. He is now completely alone, a broken man forced to live with the choices he made. Barbara is currently serving the second of her 12 years in a federal prison in West Virginia. She works in the prison's laundry facility for 12 cents an hour and receives no visitors. Ryan made one attempt to see her, but she refused him. Tom filed for divorce. Melissa is incarcerated in a different prison, also all alone. She sent me a letter that began with, "I am sorry I was wrong. Please forgive me." I threw it in the fire before I read any further. Barbara will be 74 years old when she is finally released, assuming she even survives that long. Melissa is now 2 years into her 6-year sentence in a federal prison in Kentucky. She lost custody of her daughter from a previous marriage. Her ex-husband was awarded full and sole custody. She is assigned to work in the prison kitchen. She has attempted to take her own life twice and is now under constant suicide watch. Every week, she writes me letters of apology. She sends them, but I never reply. Melissa will be 35 upon her release, with no career, no family, and 0 prospects for the future. Tom is the only one who avoided prison. He now lives in a small apartment with his brother and works a part-time job at Home Depot for $13 an hour. He is permitted supervised visits with his grandsons. Once every week, he comes over and brings them toys, reads them stories, and plays gently with them. The boys seem to like him and call him Pop Pop. I permitted this arrangement only because Tom was the single person who expressed true remorse, who testified against the others, and who tried to set things right. He weeps every single time he lays eyes on them. "I'm sorry," it says to me during every single visit. "I am so deeply sorry for what I allowed to happen." I do not offer him forgiveness, but I also do not seek to punish him. "You stood by and let evil happen," I told him once. "You knew it was completely wrong, yet you chose to remain silent. But you also made an attempt to help me, even though you were unsuccessful. For that, I will give you this one thing. You are allowed to know your grandsons, but you will never have our trust. Not ever completely." He just nods his head and accepts the terms. He knows it is more than he has any right to expect. The sun is beginning to set now, casting a golden glow over everything. Tom is bringing the boys back over to me. "Thank you for today," he says. "I will see you next week." Then he departs quietly. Emma is gathering Sophie's things. "Same time next week," she says. "Always. Love you, boss." I remind her, "I am not your boss any longer. We are friends." "Fine," she says. "Love you, friend." They share a hug, and then Emma is gone. I am finally alone with my boys. Logan and Lucas are getting sleepy, rubbing their little eyes. "Okay, you two," I say. "Let's head inside for a bath, and then it is off to bed." Logan whispers, "Story, Mama." "Yes, my sweet boy," I reply. There is always a story. Then Lucas says, "Mama, stay?" My eyes begin to water, but they are tears of joy, tears of healing. Yes, Mama will always stay. Mama is never going to leave you, not for a second. I scoop both of them into my arms. They are getting heavy now, but I can still manage. I carry them toward our home. People often ask me if I have regrets about concealing my fortune. They ask if I regret my marriage to Ryan, or if I wish I had made different choices. The honest answer is that I regret none of it. Every single decision I made brought me to this moment. It brought me to them. They made every effort to break me, and for a time, they succeeded. I was shattered into a million pieces on that frozen porch 18 months ago. But this is the one thing they never grasped about breaking another person. You have no say in how they decide to put themselves back together. I rebuilt my life, becoming stronger, sharper, and with a clearer vision of what is important. I am not the person I used to be. I do not give my trust away easily. My house is protected by a security system that could rival Fort Knox. I see a therapist twice a week, and I take medication to manage my anxiety. An unexpected knock at the door can still trigger a panic attack sometimes. I have been damaged, yes, but I am no longer broken. There is a world of difference between the two. For anyone listening to this who finds themselves in a dark place right now, I want you to know I see you. 18 months ago, I was in your shoes. I stood out in the freezing cold after having everything stripped away from me. They took my dignity, my sense of safety, and my family. I believed I was completely powerless. I believed I had absolutely nothing left. But I was mistaken. I still had myself. I still had my will to survive. I still had my profound love for my children, and that was enough. In fact, that was everything. Now, we are inside for bath time. They splash around and giggle, and I carefully wash their hair, making sure no soap gets in their eyes. They are singing silly songs to each other in that special twin language only they can decipher. After their bath, it is time for pajamas. Logan's are covered in dinosaurs, and Lucas's are decorated with rockets. They choose them on their own every night. They are discovering their independence, learning that they have the power to make choices. Then, it is time for a bedtime story. I read Where the Wild Things Are, which is the exact same book Ryan was reading to children the day I first met him at the library. But now the book belongs to us. It is mine and my boy's book now. We are creating new memories that are slowly replacing the old, painful ones. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Lucas has already drifted off to sleep. Logan is trying to fight it, but he is losing the battle. I lean down and kiss both of their foreheads, switch on the nightlight, and pull the door most of the way shut. I walk down the hall to my own bedroom, sit on the edge of my bed, and pick up my phone. I open the Haven House Foundation's Instagram page and begin to scroll through the photographs. I see the women I have helped, the babies who are now in safe homes, and the families who are beginning to thrive. The Foundation's counter shows we have assisted 2,847 families. My suffering was not meaningless. It had a purpose. It transformed into power. This was not the kind of power I had before, which was all about money, influence, income, and control. This was real power. The power to transform lives, to end destructive cycles, and to rescue others. I set my phone down and look at a framed picture on my nightstand. It is of me, holding the twins just hours after their birth, looking utterly exhausted, but also glowing with happiness. I won. My victory was not them going to prison. It was not me taking away everything they owned. I won because I am now free. I won because my sons are safe and sound. I won because I chose to fight for myself. I can hear the soft sounds from the baby monitor, the peaceful, rhythmic breathing of Logan and Lucas as they sleep. That night on the porch was the single worst moment of my entire life, but it was also the true beginning of my real life. The life where I no longer had to pretend, where I no longer had to hide, where I no longer made myself smaller to make other people feel comfortable. They tossed me aside like I was garbage, and from that, I rose like a phoenix from the ashes. I turn off my light, lie down in my bed, and close my eyes. Sleep finds me much more easily these days. The nightmares are not as common, and the fear is not as sharp. Tomorrow, I will wake up, kiss my boys good morning, prepare their breakfast, go to my job, continue to build my empire, help more mothers, and live my life. My real life, the one I chose for myself, the one I earned, and the one that nobody can ever take from me again. My name is Catherine Sarah Blake. I am a billionaire. I am a chief executive officer. I am a survivor. But more than anything else, I am a mother, and I am free. The next morning, sunlight streams into the kitchen through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I am at the stove making pancakes, while the boys sit in their high chairs, chattering to each other in their unique twin language. Logan looks right at me and says, "Mama happy." I stop what I'm doing and just look at my son. I really see his beautiful face, his complete innocence, and his unwavering trust. Yes, my sweet boy. Mama is very happy. Then Lucas reaches his little arms out to me. Love you, Mama. My eyes fill with tears again, but they are the good kind. They are tears of healing. I love you both, too, more than anything in the entire universe. I lean over and kiss both of their heads. They both giggle and get their sticky pancake hands all tangled in my hair. I do not even mind. Emma walks in with coffee and hands a cup to me. We stand there together, just watching the boys eat their breakfast, messy and joyous. You actually did it, she says. You know, you survived. I just smile. We did it, I correct her. I could not have gotten through any of this without you. So, what is coming up next? She asks. You have already had your revenge. You have rebuilt your entire life, and you have launched a foundation. What is the next big mountain you are planning to climb? I look over at my boys, at the life I have managed to build, this safe, joyful, and free life. Nothing, I tell her. There are no more mountains, just this, just being with them, just living our lives. That is enough for me. That is everything. The boys suddenly burst into laughter over some private joke. It is that pure, unfiltered joy of a toddler. I find myself laughing right along with them. It is a real laugh, completely free and unguarded. This is my life now. This is my family. And this, right here, is my happiness. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own strength, or if it gave you hope during a difficult time, please hit that like button and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. What would you have done in Sarah's shoes? Your story matters too, and I would love to hear it. If you know someone who needs to hear this message today, please share this video with them. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. Remember, they can break you, but they cannot choose how you rebuild yourself. You are stronger than you know. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful lessons and inspiration. Every story we share is crafted with the purpose of empowering you to overcome life's challenges and discover your own inner strength.